today the first session with, I think, one of the most important and arguably probably the most difficult areas to master for most firms, and that is how to invest in AI wisely. Now, this is a very big topic, and to discuss in such a short space of time, but thankfully we have some extremely knowledgeable people from some of the most respected technology and IT consulting firms in the region to help us. We have Akash from Google, AI lead, and Alessio, VP at AI at Oracle, and Savio, Chief Strategist at Imperium Software Technologies. So thank you very much for joining us. And so gentlemen, let's try and get through as many questions as we can in this short space of time that we've got, so we can make the most of your experience and insight. So first I want to ask, I think we'll put this to all three of you here. Now, with the constant hype around AI, I think there's a lot of pressure on leaders to invest in AI and a worry that they may be risk being left behind if they don't. What questions would you say should leaders be asking themselves to make sure any investment in AI is a smart one and that investment supports their business strategy? Alessio, could we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you for having me first. Yeah, the investment part of AI is a key milestone for every business. So the ability to really calculate precisely the expected return of the investment out of this technology and solution is of paramount importance. I think clear business metrics, KPIs should be on the table, and the decision should be made with a shared responsibility mode. As I used to say always in every panel over the past 10 years, AI is a team sport. So there is shared responsibility between the IT, between the business leaders in the different line of businesses. And the decision should be made in accordance between these parties. Very importantly, the governance part from the IT department should be there, because it's something doing a POC or a pilot, but maintaining these models into production is very complex. It's a continual iteration. Data is drifting and changing. Quality of the models is going down. So you need to maintain this infrastructure and make sure you have a solid foundation from a governance perspective. And also the business metrics should be measured continuously. So things like expected cost reduction, new revenue streams, customer satisfaction, adoption. Are your customers using this technology or not? That's the most important metric, because if you have a model in production and nobody uses it, what's the point? You're just wasting money. Super important to really do technical and business due diligence ahead of time and be ready to go in production as fast as possible, because this technology costs a lot.
Okay.
When you consume compute, it's costly.
Thank you. Akash, would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI is kind of speeding up so much, and there is so much going on around AI today. But business leaders, they have been running their businesses for years. They know their business better than anybody else. I think it's important for them to think about what AI can do for their business. Is it an enabler or a differentiator? They need to kind of pick the right use cases which they want to go after. They need to make sure they understand how that's going to benefit either their internal employees or their customers. It's key that they pick these use cases, very with the goal in mind that they need to create value out of their investment. So it is very tempting to go out in 7 different directions, especially when it comes to what you can see in the market. But picking the right ones is important. Pick the right ones, which you know is right for your business, but then also how will that scale? I think scaling is key here, because a lot of times you see these use cases being started off. It works at an experimental scenario, but then when you try to scale, it doesn't work. It's purely because you've not thought about scale at the very start. I think it's very important to think about scale when you start this journey as well. And the other thing is the risk appetite. I think not every business has the same risk appetite as well. So think about what the risk appetite is of your business. I see, like, I work with, say, 2 German banks. They do the same kind of business, but they have completely different risk appetite. So the way you approach an AI use case in one bank would be different from how you approach AI use case in the other one. So it's knowing your business. The leaders are the ones who know their business very well. They need to pick the right use cases. They need to understand how that will scale within their business and the appetite within their business for it to take forward as well. So those are the key points I would say is important.
And Savio, just to extend on that, obviously you work with a lot of companies here. Are you seeing the same mistakes being made about these investment decisions?
I think the key thing, and I think we've all alluded to it, including Professor Graham, I think AI is not a technology adoption, and companies need to now decide that it is not about technology, but it's a business strategy. Overall, Alessio said it, so has Akash. I think the conversation is around the business strategy and the mindset of innovation and driving efficiency inside your organization. AI being one part of the tool, but it comes down to mindset adoption, fail fast, start small, move fast kind of methodologies. The hype of AI compared to the reality of delivery sometimes is a divergent thing, and that's what causes some of the lack of movement from pilot to production. So in my view, it has to come from a top-down business strategy approach, and that brings success in the approach of investing in AI.
Savio, I'm going to stay with you. Now, I think it's quite sort of common saying that any AI solution is only going to be as good as the data it has available to use. And so what are the typical issues with data quality, data availability that sort of lead to failure? And what does good data readiness look like?
I think it's quality compared to quantity. There is a lot of data, and there's a lot of data that we collect, and some of it that we don't collect and we don't monetize enough. It's the foundational element. I think we can talk about AI all we want, but bad input is going to give you bad output. So the focus on the science of data, data science, I think these two gentlemen are in that space of doing it really well, is absolutely critical of making sure. It's a foundational element. Sometimes it's very hard to justify trying to centralize and rationalize your data consolidation because there's no, I'm going to do this, I'm going to spend a lot of money, and I'm going to get an output. But that's the foundational element of getting and moving into the innovative world of AI. If you don't do that first step, you're not going to succeed or not move to scale, as Akash put it.
And I have to bring Akash in. I think Google's probably the most famous company in the world for managing data. And so what challenges, I know certainly from experience, I've been running communications in some very large banks, and like siloed data is really, I see that has always been, I've been trying to ask for information to find stories within the bank. And a resistance as well from people to share that sort of data as well. Is these still common issues?
Absolutely. I think data is the oil in the AI machinery. So it's very important to understand that there is data. There is data. Every organization has data, but it's the quality of the data. Number one, it's the quantity of the data. So yes, you have some data. Great, it's of good quality. But do you have the quantity you need to make sure the AI models or the AI use cases you are going with actually works, and the governance. These three things are key, and they need to come together very well to ensure that, again, I go back to my point of scaling. So you can start with an experiment, which will work very well because you probably have been given some sanitized data, which you can use to prove that the model is doing what it's expecting it to do. But then when you come to a point where you need to scale, you will face exactly these three problems, the quality, quantity, and the governance. So, and again, I keep talking about banks because they're the most difficult to kind of work with when it comes to AI and data. But it was again an example of a bank where we proved the benefits of the technology in a 4-week POC. Then it took them 8 months just to get the governance sign off, because now from the proof of concept, it needs to move into a production environment where we need that scale.
Do you think that's an issue with who's in the leadership team, like having with a data science responsibility in the leadership team? Is that what's needed?
Absolutely. Silos is number one, and mindset is number two. So, you could be doing an amazing job as a team, but one leader somewhere at the top can stop the whole show, or can start putting barriers which you need to go through just to get to the end point. So I think mindset is key. So we talk about, again, AI and technology, all that is great, but what this is changing within organization is the people and the process. And that is a lot more important than just the technology itself. In the past, we used to feel technology was a blocker or technology wasn't where it needed to be. I think that shift has happened now. The technology is there. Technology is moving fast as well, but it's the people and the process which needs to follow through as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think the reality for many companies, when they end up looking to take on an AI tool or an AI solution, is they'll end up relying heavily on third-party AI platforms and providers. So does, Alessio, this question for you, does vendor lock-in create issues in terms of limiting flexibility or increase long-term costs? And how do firms balance this sort of build versus buy decisions when it comes to AI?
I'm firmly believing that the future is open source when it comes to AI models for a number of reasons. First, full control over the weights of these models. So these models are still black box models. So having at least sovereignty on the weights of this model allow you to have full control over the model. So closed source models, you lose this type of ownership. And now it's all about sovereignty when it comes to AI, especially in this part of the world where the Arabic language is quite complex and has cultural nuances. You really need to have full control over the data sets and be able to continuously fine-tune, check the safeguards to make sure that these models provide a quality input. Another important element is consistency of these models. If you ask to a model the same question 3 times, it gives you often 3 different answers. So back to the point on the quality of data, in reality, these big foundational models have been trained on the internet. You read the internet 3, 4 times, and internet data is full of rubbish. There is a lot of misinformation, deep fakes out there. So the same foundational models are causing some problems. Can be useful when it comes to the lexic, but when it comes to the semantic, so if you want meaningful results out of AI, you only need to leverage your own enterprise data, where you have full control over. Therefore, it's super important to have not only full control over the enterprise data that you use to provide the semantic, at the same time, you need to have full control over the weights of the models. And very importantly, you need to have continuous evaluation of these models, potentially in real time, to intercept the output, make sure that the model won't hallucinate, won't say wrong things, control the output and rectify it in real time, not as a post-processing initiative. So it's very complicated to balance between these aspects. Therefore, open source for me the way to go. In fact, also some of our partners like OpenAI is moving into opening up for the weights, and we see more and more development in the open source.
Thank you very much. Now, again, I think we were discussing earlier, weren't we, that quite a lot of AI's trials go very well, but when it comes to wider launch, sometimes it just simply doesn't happen or it fails there. So what are the sort of do's and don'ts of scaling from sort of pilot to sort of full production? Akash, if we could start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something which I see regularly. So the first thing I would say is usually the pilot, again, it's done in a very siloed manner. And that is a very common theme across businesses, which is in a way makes sense because you want to be quick, you want to be agile, and sometimes within a large organization, especially when I deal with enterprise organization, it's not easy to be agile and quick, if you take the whole company with you. So it's great, first of all, having the innovative mindset. You need to innovate, you have the technology to innovate, but the team which is starting that journey needs to be very mindful of the other parts of the businesses they would be touching.
Does it help to try and include some people from other parts of the business?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
So
what's the best way of doing that then?
I'll give you an example. So before I joined Google, so I used to work for Marks and Spencer in the UK, and this is going back now almost 5 years. In the AI world, I'm going to the dinosaur age now. So it feels like that. So when we were starting, we were doing a simple AI implementation where they had customer service systems with press 1, press 2, very tedious and painful for the customers, but we removed all that and put in a system where you can just speak in natural language and it can understand natural language and take you where you needed to go in. Now, this was done by a team, a team within the business. I was leading that team, but it was the business. It was impacting. So once the technology was proven, it would impact the way the contact center was going to operate as well. And what was key to do there was, and the reason why that project was successful is at very early stages, we started to bring in people from different parts of that business who were hearing about this project going on and were fearful sometimes that, okay, is my job at risk because of this? They were not sure how that's going to impact them, but then they were brought in at an early stage because saying, look, people whose job, there were people whose full-time job was to just manage recording messages because these messages had to be put into the system, so they would deal with external parties, get the text, record the messages, all that. It was a full-time job. Now the same people would not have to do that job, but now they would think about customer experience. You can now decide the text because you have been dealing with these customers day in and day out. You know what to say to the business under a certain scenario. The job is kind of changing where they can, going from one job, they can do something else, but they are actually now contributing to the customer experience, which is a lot more enriching job to do than what they were doing before. So that actually created a different attitude towards the whole project, where rather than being opposed to it, they were actually trying to help it because they could not wait for it to come into production because they wanted to be part of it in scale. So getting those people involved at an early stage, it is the most crucial thing to do if you want to scale and move into production.
Thank you. And Savio, would you say that this human aspect is one of the difficulties when you go from pilot to sort of scaling up? I think we still, as Graham mentioned in his presentation as well, we still see this narrative in the media very much that we're all going to lose our jobs, and that's fed, Elon Musk has made very similar comments around this many times as well, so keeping it very much sort of in people's mindsets. So is it this fear that's like one of the big things we need to tackle in the workforce when we're sort of scaling from pilot to a wider launch?
I think there were two questions in that. I think to address the human losing jobs, look, AI is definitely one of these disruptive forces in our lives. We've had many of them in our lifetime, and in every disruptive force you see sort of job movement. So it's not about AI. AI is definitely a larger disruptive force, but within the internet, we saw a number of functions, tools, even jobs sort of move or, sort of deviate to a different function. The same thing's going to happen with AI. You are not going to be able to do it without human beings. Yes, there are going to be, and everything is not linear, right? You're going to have drops and peaks and troughs. So you're definitely going to see a movement in jobs. Does that mean humans are going to disappear? No, they're not. We're definitely, the predominant force of driving AI. On what was the last part of that question was on.
Well, it's just this thing about what are the challenges? I think is it a human challenge, like to scale up? It's managing those sort of fears. And I guess what might be interesting is how can leaders sort of lead through that sort of fear?
Yeah, I think it's inclusivity. I think we're sort of now moving, I think we must be in third or fourth generation AI. We started with basic automation, then we had bots that did stuff, then we had natural language, then we have generative, and now we're getting into agentic. So there are different variations of this, and I think it's very important for leaders to sanitize what good looks like, what the success criteria are, and make people inclusive. We always talk about pilots being use cases, but I think that's the issue. When you start with the use case, those use cases stay siloed, and you're creating a silo. I think it needs to be a more macro sort of outcome-driven, sort of at a leadership level. It should be a more outcome-driven kind of discussion.
You'll communicate this part. We're trying to get this
We're going to start here, but this is going to move into every department, and all of you guys need to be involved and see if we start with this use case, how that use case can pan into every single piece of the, all business units of an organization.
And Alessio, do you want to expand on that in terms of how do we communicate these sort of pilots within an organization so it gets that sort of buy-in for a wider rollout?
Sorry, the question?
What is a good way to sort of communicate about when you start using the tool, let's say in a pilot phase, and try and get that buy-in from different departments across an organization? What are good communication tips?
I think AI should be seen as a structured program in an organization. This is critical, having really buy-in from the top, from the leadership, like this amazing nation is doing. So from the leadership in an organization, every little success should be prized. So there should be a communication plan within the organization where really award innovations stemming from this technology. I've seen in the past, I was working with Akash across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We've seen the early successes where big companies, big corporates were really promoting massively internally the success of AI, and accordingly design learning paths for the workforce. It's super important to get into learning as soon as possible and progressively build a center of excellence where every person in an organization has a certain degree of knowledge on this technology. Of course, the line of businesses should know just a little piece of it, whilst the IT department, the data scientists, AI engineers, and data engineers, more technical skills are needed.
And Akash, do you see like a sort of a broader understanding of what AI is happening in companies and maybe making it easier to communicate about it? Or is there still a real deficit of knowledge on what AI is and how it works that it struggles for project teams to talk about AI and get buy-in from the business?
I think the one amazing thing I like about AI is AI allows leaders to communicate with proof. I'll explain what I mean by that. So, the leaders of their businesses, they see the value in what they're doing with AI. Now, they could be running an enterprise which has thousands of employees. And we talk about fear. When we are faced with fear, as humans, it's a natural reaction, fight or flight. There's an instinctive reaction to that. And that would be the reaction across the business. Now, in the past, when leaders wanted to communicate a transformation strategy, they would come up with slides with 5-year, 7-year transformation plans. But now with AI, we will talk about experimentation, innovation. It can happen so quickly that you can say, look what our team has built. We were doing this thing in a certain way. Now with AI, we are doing it this way. And when you show your staff, your employees, how it's going to benefit the business, how it is going to change the business, how it's going to evolve the business in your own business environment. It's great to come and say, okay, this company did that or that company did that, but how we are doing it and how we're going to achieve it, that's key. So when they see it in their own environment, they kind of relate to it more easily. That's one part of it. The second part is they can see this coming now, they see the value of it, but how is it going to impact them? That's the next question coming up. And that's where upskilling and making sure that the teams or the employees have the tools and skills to upskill them as well. And end of the day, it's going to be at an individual level. If no matter what happens in AI, there will be humans needed. In what shape or form, we don't even know today to manage it. Without that, this is going to be anarchy in the world. I hope it doesn't go there. But there will be jobs which we don't even know about. There will be jobs which will be 100 times interesting than what you do today. But it's the mindset which needs to be open. It's the learning and upskilling. We have to keep learning all the time. Gone are the days where you do a degree and for 25, 30 years, you are good. It's gone. Those days are gone.
I think it's easy to forget that AI has been around for a very, very long time, since like the 50s. We've had like the old firm stats were AI, and people were still working then and still are now. I think, yeah, it's good to perhaps remind ourselves of that a little bit. And again, this is thinking of my background. I spent a lot of time in the very large banks, and I've worked with telcos and some very large companies here as well. That this sort of legacy IT infrastructure you have in particularly larger companies or older companies, like the traditional sectors, typically have this issue. How do you ensure your AI solutions sort of fit with your existing IT infrastructure? And how does that work with the data and stuff? I know I've worked on bank mergers, and the whole reason they've taken so long is because of this legacy system trying to change things in it. So bringing something very new, like an AI solution, to get that to work with that can be very problematic. Alessio, what sort of problems can be experienced, and what should you be looking for?
Yeah, so as I told you before, tapping into enterprise data is of paramount importance for the semantics of these models. The integration part can be challenging at the beginning of the journey, but as you know, the technical team gets used to govern models into production, becomes easier and easier. So honestly, compared to 5-6 years ago, with the technologies we have nowadays, you can go in production quite easily and quickly. All the tooling is out there. There are tools to really make sure that track in real time the performance of these models and really help the technical team to course correct potential quality issues. The other point that is very important is to have a strong cybersecurity foundation. So the CISO, the Chief Security Officer, should be involved in every conversation to adopt the right safeguards for the model, to avoid things like prompt injections, malicious activities that impact the quality of these models. But all these capabilities and features are there in the tooling that companies like ours are providing. So I feel very confident on the fact that now I see customers going live very quickly and returning this investment quickly. And I would like to make sure that, for customers, it's clear that the technology is there. I see some hesitation, large companies, small companies alike. However, really designing properly, doing proper planning ahead, allow these companies to take advantage of this.
And is it for you two guys as well? Is it the companies underestimate like the AI workloads on their sort of legacy systems, or the computing power needed? Is that a typical issue?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of education, lots of understanding of what it takes to drive true AI. We've seen a number of approaches with customers. Some of it is, rationalizing your data. That becomes a very important thing. But then you also see entities, especially in the banking world, where they sort of set up almost a new entity, almost like a bipolar approach, where they start fresh. So it's almost like a green field. So you'll see legacy bank, but then they'll have a digital arm. Emirates Bank has done it. We've seen some in the region do this, where you almost start from zero so that you can build from the ground up with no inhibitions to trying to overcome some of the legacy pieces. So you see a mix of these approaches.
Is that a good way of sort of sidestepping the sort of...
It helps because then you upskill, you bring in new talent, you bring in new infrastructure to drive a whole approach, and you're hoping that somehow you can migrate across this eventually in some shape and form. Does that work always? No, because the demographics of people to resisting change, you still need your core banking pieces, where there are many customers that are just
back to the organization,
exactly. You're still going to service a large customer base that might not fancy that, and that's your core, bread and butter. And but you are driving for the future and future-proofing your enterprise by trying to build these elements out.
Okay, I think we are out of time now. It is, as I say, a very, very deep topic. I think we've covered quite a bit of ground there, but I'm sure there's a lot more that we could cover given more time. But thank you, gentlemen, for your time. That was really helpful, and I hope everyone found that useful as well.
Yep, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.